Chapter 18. 3. To love their children. Titus 2, 4-5. That they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children. Let the children lead them. The most important thing a mother will do for her children is to create an atmosphere of peace and joy by deeply loving their daddy and being satisfied with life. Several years ago, my husband did a family life seminar for homeschooling families at a large, very conservative church. The people were given age-appropriate questionnaires before we got there. Each homeschooled child, from every child who could write, up to single adults still living at home, was asked 2 questions. 1. Is your home happy? 2. What one thing would you like to see changed in your home that would make you a happier person? We were not expecting profound answers. We thought the children would say that they wanted name-brand clothes, or more freedom, or maybe more access to video games. We hoped we would get a few serious answers, like some kids saying they want to spend more time with their parents or they wanted to be trusted. The responses shocked and saddened us. Out of about 75 responses, only 2 of the 3 kids considered their homes happy. Nearly all 75 answers of the second question were basically the same. 10-year-olds, who could barely spell, to single, college-age adults had the same hopes and anguishes. They all said to the effect of, "I wish Mommy and Daddy would love each other." The younger kids wrote answers like these. Our homes would be happier if Mommy and Daddy would not fight. I would make my Mama and Daddy like each other. We would have a happy home if Mama would not talk bad about Daddy. And I wish Mama would not talk back and make Daddy get mad and yell. The older ones wrote along these lines. Our home would be more peaceful if Mom did not walk around with this frozen bitterness. I feel like we live in a war zone. How do you love your children? Let these 75 homeschool kids lead you to this important truth. Love their daddy. Honor their daddy. Obey their daddy. Forgive their daddy. I don't want to be like Mama. Dear Pearls, I would like to share my story with you. It is simple, but probably common, and it needs telling. When I was a child, I was always aware that my mom was distrustful of my dad. If one of his children did a bad thing, she was quick to deal with us, so Daddy will not whip you too hard. If Dad was going out to buy something, she would worry aloud that he will be foolish in how he spends the money. When he got laid off, I remember her saying over and over, I guess I need to learn a trade. Someone in this house has to work. I cannot fault her in any area of motherhood. She kept us fed, clothed, and warm. But when I think of my mother, I think of a worried, fretful woman who was always ticked off by Dad. Our home was tense. I have only a few memories of her smiling. I cannot remember a time when she sat in Dad's lap or danced around the room in a playful fun. He was not a mean man. I remember hard whippings, but not any harder than the neighbor kids got. I remember him being interested in me. He taught me how to do simple, fun things. But because of her, I always avoided him. All of his kids are grown now. My brother did great in life. His marriage has been good, and his children seem well adjusted. When he was growing up, he was gone to work with Dad all the time. Us girls never went with Dad, and so we were at home listening to Mom talk about how hard our life was. All of us girls had terrible use, and we have all had bad marriage troubles. Our kids have not done well. We don't talk much about it, but we know Mom played a big part in our misery. She still lays all the blame on Dad, although we all know he was just an average guy. I always knew I did not want to be the kind of wife and mama. I wanted my children to remember me as loving their dad and enjoying life. I did not care if we lived in the back of an old van and ate junk food. I wanted my children free of tension and the feeling that their dad was a dummy who had to be tolerated. My first marriage ended after a few short months. I determined when I married again that I would do it right. When I got married the second time, I lost my way and didn't even know it. When I realized that we would have to move because my husband's company was downsizing and he was out of work, I packed in bitterness. While silently accusing him for not being a good provider and forcing me out of my lovely home, then one day I looked up at him and saw the same lost look in his face that I had seen on my dad's face 1,000 times when Mom was taking care of the family. I was just like my mom, Something inside me broke, and I hated the wonderful person that I was. It was then that I remembered my promise to myself to never be like my condemning mom. I had brought you The Joy of Training DVD and Marriage tapes months before our move, but I had not watched them. I knew the time had come. I'd settled down in the living room among the boxes, and before long the whole family had joined me. We laughed and laughed at the big old mountain man telling the funny stories. We sent the kids to their rooms and finished up the Wives Honor Your Husband tape. My laughter turned to weeping, and my kind husband held me in his arms while I begged for forgiveness. I cannot tell you how changed our family is. My husband is thinking of starting a business. He has wanted to for years, but my fear of failure has held him back no more. If we end up living in a van, that's okay. I am sad for lost ground with my children. More than anything, for my daughters. I want to break this ugly chain of bitterness, critical womanhood. I have asked their forgiveness and found that they were glad to be over the tension. They know that from now on, they are going to have a mama who thinks Dad is great, even when he is not what I think he should be. He really is a great guy. I am so ashamed when I think of all the earthly hell I have put him through. Our children are going to grow up secure in love, not insecure in a spotless home, insurance paid, and name brand clothes. Life has never been so good. Better late than never. From all of us, a great big thanks, Sheila. Sheila is obeying the word of God. She is loving her children by loving their dad. This next letter is typical of so many women who seek to love self more than loving their husband and children, seeking something higher than God. Dear Mr. Pearl, I am a busy mom whose children go to a Christian school. I am realizing that without another close female in my life who could share house duties, it is harder on me than it should be. I meet with 2 prayer groups each week and have them pray for me and my family by name. My biggest need is for help physically in caring for the housework and someone to sit in quiet worship with me. I need at least 4 hours per week of meditation time, self-actualization time. It is 4 a.m. now, and I'm up writing my friends to ask for prayers and see if they know of any gals with 5 children of their own who might be as stressed as I am. I am frustrated because my culture and my isolation from regular and close friendship with wise women. I have a heart desire to change my current lifestyle and to live a rich, full, meaningful life. And I am motivated so because I want the best for God. I trust you will send me love in Him, TP. Dear Sister TP, your divine calling is to serve your family. True worship of God is not dependent upon others or special circumstances, nor does it require a time of meditation. The Spirit of God is present when you wash the dishes or pick up the dirty clothes, and He is there while you prepare meals for your family in the evening. God never intends for you to have intimacy with another woman, whether in worship or otherwise. Stimulating your own inner feelings in the name of worship is selfish mockery, approaching idolatry. Your seeking of self-actualization in the name of spirituality is a mixture of foolish psychology and emotional insecurity. You are part of a trending sweep through church women's circles in pursuit of intimacy and deep feelings apart from their husband. This inner self-stimulation is what my husband calls spiritual masturbation. It is spiritually more akin to Eastern mystic meditation. When your spirituality competes with your service to others, especially your husband and family, it is just that, your spirituality. Jesus said to Peter, "Do you love me? Then feed my sheep." God does not call women to be mountaintop gurus or seek out for their personal benefit. He commands them to be keepers at home, to obey their husbands, to render due benevolence, give him good sex, and reverence him. Remember that the sin of Eve was to seek deeper knowledge and to be like the gods. Independent of her husband, she sought to go deeper. Her ambition was personal, spiritual fulfillment, which is the most selfish drive that can possess a person and the easiest to justify, humanly speaking. It is the foundation of all sin and rebellion. Learn to read the scriptures just a few minutes here and there throughout the day, and meditate on what you read as you work. Sing unto the Lord. Do not allow the lowly woman's club mentality to sweep you away from your role as a wife and a mother. Your time at church and prayer meetings is sufficient enough time with other women. Focus your life on your home, husband, and children. There is a grave danger in becoming emotionally dependent on other women. Too many times I've seen this lead to something abnormal and sick. Your husband and God should be the ones to whom you turn for emotional support and intimacy. Women who seek higher spirituality end up feeling and acting spiritually superior to their husbands and others in the church, and it is a death knell to a healthy marriage relationship. Spend that desired spiritual time with your husband, where real growth and maturity with God will be found. Seek to serve your family by tying your little one's shoestrings, reading a book to your toddler, telling a simple Bible story to the whole gang, making sweet love with your husband. These are the things God counts as important, knowing and loving him. Debi. A wise woman never expects anyone to serve her, and is therefore never disappointed. She is ready to help, always the giver. By her example, her children learn to cheerfully and energetically serve. Raising cows or kids. Train up your child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. God has honored mothers with the blessed privilege of being the daily trainers of the young children. He did not place this responsibility in grandma's hands or your good friends, teachers, or babysitters. All of us mothers will stand before God one day and give an account of how we trained our children. To love our children is to devote ourselves fully to their training. If we fail here, we fail as a helpmeet. Husbands go away to work and leave their young children in our care. They trust us to train them up to be all that they can be. If we fail our children, we fail our husbands, and we fail God. Some of the new commercial translations say, "Discipline up a child in the way he should go." We will not put that extra text in bold because it does not deserve status of Scripture. Only someone who knows little about God and the Hebrew language, and even less about children, would translate what God said in such a way. God said, "Train up," not "discipline up." The Hebrew word translate "train up" appears only 4 other times, and each time it is translated dedicate. Parents train up their children by dedicating themselves, their time, and their children to that which God desires for them to become as an adult. This is not discipline. It is not commission from God to train them as full-time occupation. Training up a child means showing them how to make corn tortillas, pedal a tricycle, make up a bed, put toys away, cook for 40 people in an hour, read, demonstrate respect for others, and 1,000 other wonderful things. For a mother who loves her children, training is not a chore. It is a full-time, all-consuming passion. They are worth every minute of time and trouble to every dedicated mother. Little Esther is only 5 years old. She is quite confident and competent in setting the table and folding the clothes. She knows the difference between the application of cabbage and lettuce, because when she helps make salad and slaw, her mother discusses the ways and wherefore of all they are doing. When she is asked to wash the broccoli and cauliflower, she knows both how and why. Esther helps fold the clothes and put them away. She knows all her colors, because from the earliest stage she has helped separate dirty clothes into different color piles. When Esther takes a book off the shelf, she chooses carefully, because she wants books that have words she can read. She can read many words, not because she has been officially schooled, but because her mother has always taken time to read to her, occasionally stopping to point out words and how to say them. All this has been fun. When Esther starts school, she will already know how to read many words. Therefore, learning will not be a tense, fearful exercise, but only a continuation of her first 5 years of informal learning. Her mother spends all day stimulating her developing mind with intriguing ideas. Esther's mom has 10 children, yet she is not too busy for Esther or her younger brother. Many little children are not so blessed as Esther. Many mothers treat their children as I treat my cows. I make sure they have good things to eat, clean water, and a place to exercise. If they show any signs of sickness, I attend to them immediately. This is good for cows, but if you raise kids like that, you're going to have a brood of little dummies. Unlike your care of cows, the training of your children is the deepest expression of your love for them. Mama, why am I so dumb? I've been around some real dumb kids. I ask them, "Did you see the eclipse last night?" Stare. I heard your dad is designing a new program for the flight school. Stare. Did your mom put whole wheat flour in these cookies? Stare. Mom answers, she doesn't cook yet, and he doesn't know his daddy's work at the flight center. My husband and I enjoyed the eclipse, but it was too cold for the children to come out. Besides, they were watching a video. We visited a different family whose father also works at the flight center and spoke to a child who was 2, almost 3 years old. Donnie, did you see the eclipse last night? Yep, and the Milky Way too. We looked through a telescope. I heard your daddy is designing a new program for the flight school. Yep, my daddy is showing them how to build a better airplane, 'cause he is smart, and I am smart, and I can make an airplane with my Legos, but it cannot fly, because why? I asked him, fully expecting an intelligent answer. After all, any 2-year-old who can make an airplane out of Legos has to be brilliant. He didn't disappoint me. It hasn't got a motor, he explained. I decided to check out his knowledge of the kitchen. Did your mom use whole wheat for these cookies? Right on cue, he responds, yep, and they are so healthy. Do you want to see my muscles? Mom, let me mix up the cookies 'cause I am strong. Knowledge is something given bit by bit. It sounds almost like computer-age learning. Lots of little bits to make a bite. And always we go to kilobytes and megabytes of information, all stored in little bits. The scriptures say it is like this. Whom shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk, and draw from the breast. For precept upon precept, precept upon precept. Line upon line, line upon line. Here, there, and there a little. Will the real mama please stand up? Just because you happen to be the birth mom of a child does not make you the mama of the child. If you hurriedly get up in the morning and rush your little ones off for someone else to dry their tears, feed him lunch, read him a book, please do not call yourself his mama. This child is being adopted out every day, with the added insult of being yanked around from one adopted mama to another. In order to bond properly and grow up emotionally stable, a small child must spend a vast majority of his time with his one true permanent mama, whose God has ordained to daily pour knowledge and love into the little life. Daddies are different from mamas in many ways. They provide security that is so vital to a child's emotional health, but no dad can take the place or fill the need that only the feminine personality can supply. A mother's constant presence, the same comforting, nourishing breast, the same room, the same blanket, the same sippy cup, the same toy, makes a child feel secure. You cannot jerk a child around from one babysitter to another and expect him to be secure and well-balanced at a 4-year-old. But you can't expect a child raised in that manner to not cherish his mother later when he is 8, 10, 15, or 25 years old, just when she begins to need some cherishing herself. If your child is to later cherish you, you must cherish him every day, every hour of his development. There are no neutral moments in a child's life. Every moment is a time of continuous need and development. For a moment, if we skip forward to the list of commands in Titus 2:5, we read that women are to love their children and to be keepers at home. There is a context in which we are to love our children to the max, and God says it is when we are keepers at home. Consider this your fair warning. You cannot improve upon God's design. In life, there are few things that must be done right the first time around. The hall. There is no permanent cure for genital herpes and many other forms of STDs. Yet 1 in 5 young teens in the USA has a sexually transmitted disease. Many statistics also tell us that 1 in 4 little girls will be sexually messed with by the time they are 4 years old. 1 in 5 little boys will be victims of homosexual abuse. Our children are in grave danger in today's world, not only from emotional trauma, but also from many other diseases. How many times will your little toddler wander down the hall while you sit in a room full of friends engrossed in a video, before some young, trustworthy teenage boy slips silently in behind him or her and maneuvers her into the bathroom for a 4-minute session? When the 4 minutes are up, your little child will emerge forever broken and diseased. You cannot pray and expect God for supernatural intervention and protection. God has already provided for her through you. You can and must pray and ask God to make you a more attentive and sober parent, that you might better protect your children. You are your baby's keeper. Please keep them well. To the book, To Train Up a Child by Michael and Debi Pearl is a must-read for every mama who loves their kids and wants them to be happy, obedient, hardworking, and smart. Check it out at nogreaterjoy.org website. Chapter 19, To Be Discreet. Titus 2, 4-5. That they may teach their young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet. To be discreet, prudent, wise, in avoiding error and in selecting the best means to accomplish a purpose. Circumspect, courteous, polite, honest dealings. We learned the practical side of marriage when we studied the word sober, the sexual side when we studied to love our husbands, and that our job is to be instant in season and out of season. We learn how to love our children. The next word of God's list is discreet. One usually thinks of discretion as the ability to avoid saying or doing something which is inappropriate, to know when and how to act, to know when and how to conduct oneself so as not to offend. If this is all that is intended by the text, then a person intending to commit fraud would always attempt to do so discreetly, but much more is obviously contained in this word. The Greek word that is translated discreet is also translated in the Authorized Version taste several times, and other instances it is translated behavior and judgment. Discretion, therefore, is having good taste, good judgment, useful, to be of good understanding. God says that a woman who lacks discretion is like a jewel in a pig's nose. She is ridiculous, out of place, embarrassing, a joke. Something otherwise lovely is rendered ridiculous in the context of indiscretion. She might be pretty, a real jewel of beauty, but if the jewel is in the nose of a pig, what good is it? As a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is a fair woman which is without discretion. As I studied the word discreet, I realized how easy it is for us women to miss having the character trait of discretion, and I marveled that so many of us so often have been guilty of its lack in our character. Think about it. Let's carefully examine discretion in all of its many aspects. Seek to be courteous. Consideration of others. Prisoners speak. If you read the life story of prisoners who have been rehabilitated, you will notice that one thing they all have in common. It doesn't matter if the man is God-fearing or not. They all write that the day they learned to be considerate of others was the first day they stopped being the kind of person that put them behind bars. Rehabilitated men write of learning to be considerate of other men's rights to walk unarmed down the street, the right of a lady to live without fear, the old man's right to drive slowly through town without being reviled or teased, and the right of a young child to grow up unmolested. Consideration is just another way of saying, do unto others as you would have others do to you. A child learns how to be considerate by watching his parents being considerate, the same way they learn how to be good hypocrites. If a parent exhibits a great deal of politeness towards a guest while he is present, but speaks ill of him when he is gone, this teaches the child to be dishonest and hypocritical. Being polite and being considerate are not necessarily the same, or even related. Politeness is just performing in a culturally acceptable way. The motivation to be polite can be quite selfish. When you deal with insurance companies, when you return purchased goods, when you borrow or lend things, and even when you are reacting to other motorists, you must remember to consider the other person's welfare. You need to be mindful of the other person's perspective and weaknesses. The old red truck. The following two verses are examples of how the word discreet is used in God's word. Now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath shown thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Almost 20 years ago, my husband decided we would leave our lifetime home and move to the country 170 miles away. At our new home, many of our neighbors were Amish or Mennonite born. It did not take us long to realize that discretion was a character trait highly valued among these plain people. Our Amish neighbors never used anyone unfairly and would never cheat or steal. Let no man seek his own, but every man's another wealth. We had an old red pickup truck that was pretty much a piece of junk, but it still ran. One of the young Amish men who did not have a vehicle needed to use a truck for a brief hauling project. We told him he could use the old red truck. For years, the very rusty floor was about to fall through. When he returned the truck, we were stunned, for the floor was fixed, and we noticed it seemed to run smoother than it had before he borrowed it. And shocked of all shocks, the boy had filled the tank with gas. We figured the gas that was in it now would outlast the old truck. We have had a lot of people borrow a lot of things over the years, but we never had anyone treat our old truck better than they would have treated their own. After that, we were ready to loan him anything we had. Like Joseph of old, this young man showed himself to be discreet and wise. He was careful, considerate, and watchful of our property. When you are discreet, wise, and kind in your dealings with other people, you will reap the benefit throughout life. If you treat someone shabbily or unfair, even when you have a good excuse, it will never be forgotten. Others will whisper your unjust deeds, adding their knowledge of your lack of honest dealings with them. Such a reputation is impossible to lie down. An indiscreet person has to move, often leaving his tarnished reputation far behind. Honesty, kindness, integrity, and discretion pay dividends many times over. Seek to be honest. Discretion is good judgment. The fancy pig. A person without discretion is without honor. Remember the jewel in the pig's nose? As a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is a fair woman which is without discretion. If a woman uses her friends by asking unnecessary favors or by borrowing and not returning, she is showing a lack of basic courtesy, which is an important element of discretion. When a woman manipulates people or situations, leaving others feeling used, all the while smiling in triumph at getting her way, she is the one actually losing. Women who want the best food, clothes, chairs, jewelry, car, etc., are fodder for Satan. Envy slayeth the silly one. Silly one, rude, simple, contemptuous of character. Silly women are so easy to deceive into believing a lie. Satan will provide ample opportunities for her to use people. He wants to make fools of us all, but the woman without discretion is easy prey, making it easy for him to lead her astray. The woman without discretion will go to the local eatery and get 10 packs of sugar while sweetening her coffee, and using only one, taking the others home. She will use others' resources and think she is cool for pulling it off, and then will brag to her friends. Those who hear her might laugh, and she interprets it as admiration, but they go away knowing that there is something disgusting about their friend. She is not considerate, courteous, or thoughtful. She uses others with no thought to the hurt it may cause. You can see why God calls her a jewel on the end of a pig's nose. Men are aware that women are sometimes spiritually acute and sensitive, but unless the woman is proven otherwise, men tend to hold them in a kind of reverence. They like to believe their women are good, wholesome, and clean, and that their consciences are pure. Many a fight has occurred over a woman's honor. Down at the prison where my husband goes each week to preach, all the men hold their mamas at high esteem, but few care about their daddies. If a man of integrity has the misfortune of having a wife who has a suggestion of dishonesty about her, that man will be ashamed, but it will be a silent shame, and it will eat away at him, at his soul, and at his honor. Even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. Finally, be you of one mind, having compassion one of another, one as brethren. Be pieful, be courteous, seek to be gracious. Discretion is good taste. The stove. Dear Mrs. Pearl, I know that joy comes from complete submission to God and to my husband. Does that mean I should not be frustrated and just plain tired? I have a question. Should one be quiet when you know your husband is making a poor decision? Doesn't being a helper mean that I need to help him make better decisions? Last week, my husband went to buy a new stove that we badly needed. He picked out a top-of-the-line stove and was willing to spend too much money in order to have the best. He called and asked me to go look at it and let him know what I thought. I shared my deep concern that it was simply too expensive. We do have the money, but I saw no need to buy the best. When the next scale down would do just as well, he called and told me that he canceled the order and bought the one I recommended. We both felt better with what I picked out. Should I have kept my mouth shut? I didn't tell him not to get it. I just thought it was unwise to spend money unnecessarily. Do I have to submit in everything? For example, what color to paint the walls, or what kind of furniture to have? Are we to be just mindless robots? He sent my 2 oldest children to public school against my better judgment, and I can now see some negative effects. I guess I have to live with that. I think I save him, myself, and my careless younger daughter from the many skirmishes. I really want to do the right thing. I battle this all the time. I want genuine joy, but it is not here. Ruth. Dear Sister Ruth, you wrote about a stove, but the thing that caused you to write to me was the lack of joy. The uneasy void you feel is your conscience testifying to you of your blame in many matters of life. You want to change, to be the kind of person who doesn't try to control, who is at peace and can let go of issues like this. But there's another part of you that wants to hold on and justify the very actions that bring you such misery of conscience. Your husband's choice of stove is a statement that he is trying to express his great appreciation of you and to please and delight you. Your countermanding his choice, even if it were a better choice, speaks to him about how little you value him, more than does about how you value the dollar. In effect, your action said that, like so many times before, he was not even capable of making a choice as simple as purchasing a stove. Your history of cautious leading says to me that you see yourself as a wise woman, but you view him and your careless daughter as lacking good common sense. You feel your husband lacks discretion in spending money, raising children, and in many other areas. But it is not your husband's lack of discretion that troubles your conscience, it is you. Your lack of joy tells the true state of your soul. You don't like yourself, yet you don't know why. Most women could tell their husbands which stove they wanted and what color to paint they preferred, even debate with him over it, and it would never be an issue. It is an issue with you because it is not just a stove. It is the fact that you view your husband as inept. This is how you feel. This is why life is a constant struggle, why you're unhappy, why your daughter is careless, and why, just a guess, you do not have a good sex life. It is all tied together. Regardless of the issue at hand, your actions seem to say that you think of yourself as being somewhat wiser and him more of a fool. Your conscience speaks louder than the worldview you have adopted, louder than your logic, louder than your wisdom, in saving the family from foolishness. Your conscience, at least, is telling the truth, which is why you wrote to me. You have forgotten the pleasure of having a man do something special for you, and have left off the important things in life. A gracious woman retaineth honor. If you have been wise, gracious, and loving when your husband called to inform you of the stove he had in mind to buy, you would have laughed and been delighted with your husband's choice of stove. If you had viewed the extra expense as one would a gift of flowers, a wonderfully beautiful waste of money, an extravagant gesture of devoted husbandly love, yours especially, but his life also, would have been richer and fuller for it. After all, it was just money, and you said yourself you had the means to afford the one he chose. He would have been so delighted that you were pleased with what he had picked out for you. Something that simple could have changed your relationship into something wonderful. Every time you stood at the stove, cooking, it would have reminded you of your husband's love, and whenever he saw you cooking on it, just imagine the deep satisfaction that he would always feel in having expressed himself so lavishly towards you. But now, every time you cook on the stove you picked out, you will feel your own wisdom and economy. He will remember your rejection and his foolishness, and the food will never taste as good. The stove that you must use will always be a constant reminder of what a fool your husband is. Do you remember earlier in this book the girl who pulled her husband's arm from around her shoulders because he messed up her hair? In effect, that is what you did with the rejection of his choice of stove. It is no wonder that you are frustrated and just plain tired. I'm plain tired of thinking of the damage that you have done and what you have been missing. Your husband is probably tired too, tired of this marriage. You think in terms of this stove or that stove, this choice or that, whether to have to be silent or say your piece. The real issue is your heart's perspective. If your attitude were right in all the little areas, you could safely discuss with him about which stove, and no one would feel rejected. It is just that issue, like the stove becoming the point at which you recognize the problem that exists in your mind and your heart about your relationship with your husband. It will not be enough for you to just force yourself into silence and start surrendering your will. It is time for you to start practicing reverence towards your husband. Go back and read the story found earlier in the book about the girl named Sunny, and ask God to do a work in your heart as He did in hers. I know you are seeking God. As you seek to do it God's way, He will help you establish a heavenly marriage. Read again the story of Jezebel found in the first section, and make a list of the responses in your life that you are going to change. Read the section on joy and learn to practice joy and thanksgiving. Then read the section on loving your man, and perhaps you both can cook up something really nice without a stove of any kind. Debi. The skinny swine. Lack of judgment. Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. A wise woman doesn't attempt to instruct her husband through fraying questions. Her questions will be sincere inquiries concerning his will. The skinny woman who inspired this next list of questions doubtless saw herself as a kind person, wonderful mother, and a first-rate wife. Yet she was tearing down her house one question at a time. 12 questions a wife can ask that will tear down her house. 1. Do you feel comfortable spending that much money buying that? He begins to doubt his ability to make wise decisions. 2. Are you sure God wants you to work at that job and be away from us all the time? He wonders about his reason for working there, even though it is a good job. He remembers he has had opportunity to witness, yet he grows unsure of his own leading. 3. Honey, I need to ask you something very important that really tears me up inside. Doesn't this activity that you are engaging in grieve your spirit? The Spirit of God has been prompting him concerning this, but he was trying not to hear. He almost brought the subject up himself last evening. But now she is disappointed with him. He suspects he is not spiritual, but somehow the whole thing makes him angry. He feels pushed. Now he resists her just to maintain control. 4. Why don't you ever want to go with me to... He doesn't feel comfortable around those people. They seem so artificial, and their kids are whiny. The man talks in a quiet, humble way, which grates at his nerves. It just seems so put on, but his wife doesn't see it that way. He guesses he must be carnal. Somehow, he just doesn't care anymore. 5. Before we were married, you read your Bible, or at least you said you did. Why don't you ever read and teach me and the children? He has a vague memory of enjoying reading and relating to how scared Moses was of the job God gave him, but somewhere he just lost interest. 6. Why don't you spend more time with our sons? The thrill of having boys has faded. The few times he has disciplined them, his wife later talked with him about being harsh. Maybe he was. He likes being with the men better. Anyways, they are Mama's boys. Not that they are sissies. They just have this close, talky relationship with Mama. He feels separated from them. He's just not that type. He can see the accusation in the boys' eyes. It is reflected from their mother's eyes. He sees the same questioning looks, which provokes in him the same feeling of condemnation he gets from being around her. He thinks, I am a real loser. I wonder if I'm even saved. 7. Do you ever think of just loving me in a spiritual way instead of always the carnal? I am so hungry for some deep spiritual understanding and communication. Something deep inside him is so dissatisfied, so frustrated that she responds intimately only when she feels right about it. It speaks nothing of his manhood. His soul is sick all the way to its core. He falls asleep fantasizing about the woman he met in the store today. God help his filthy soul. 8. Sweetheart, why won't you have devotions with us? We want you to lead us in prayer and help us grow spiritually. The Bible says you are a spiritual leader. Why? Why will you not lead? He laughs inside himself. Are you kidding? I can't do that. I would feel like a total hypocrite. I can't teach them about something I don't know. I'm out of here. He leaves, or works, or watches TV, all the same. It is his escape. 9. Why do you think the pastor said that about Charles? Don't you think it was cruel? Sometimes I wonder if we should go to church somewhere else. Angry bile seizes in him as he listens to her tell the story for the 4th time. He silently contemplates. The pastor's a hypocrite. He's not any better than anyone else. I don't know what makes him think he's so righteous. 10. Poor Charles. It is so sad to see that the preacher's mean words have done to that family. Don't you think we should do something about it? Like call and let them know we love them and don't agree with the pastor? Besides, I am hurt at the pastor myself. Frustrated at his own failures and being full of bitterness for others has run its course and is now bearing fruit, as he silently surmises. All those self-righteous people make me sick. I don't care what they do, but they will not do it to me. 11. Honey, it's church time. You need to get dressed. What? You're not going? But you always go to church. Do you think you should let a silly thing like that business with Charles keep you from worship? Besides, you know the pastor was right, that Charles was up to no good all along. You have to go to church. What about the boys? You'll be a bad influence on them. Don't you care? 12. Jane, I want you to know that without your close, loving friendship, which I turn to every day, I would never be able to get through this loveless marriage. He is so cold and distant. He doesn't care about the children. I don't know how I could have been so deceived into thinking he was a fine Christian man when I married him. Will you ask the girls to pray for him this week at our women's meeting?